I want to tell you about a patient I'll call Raymond, 71 years old, retired school principal, came in with a fasting blood sugar of 192 and a look on his face like a man who'd already accepted bad news. His doctor had just told him it was time to add a second diabetes medication. He'd been on the first one for 3 years. Numbers kept climbing anyway. He slid the prescription across my desk and said, "Is this just how it goes now?" And I told him something that surprised him. I said, "Raymond, before you fill that, give me 8 weeks. Not a diet, not a restriction plan. I'm going to ask you to add things." He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Here's what most people, including most doctors, never explain to patients like Raymond. High blood sugar is not simply about eating too much sugar. It's about what's happening to the machinery inside your cells. And once you understand that, the whole game changes because you stop trying to restrict your way out of a problem that restriction alone cannot fix. In the next 12 minutes, I'm going to walk you through 10 specific foods, what they do inside your body at the cellular level, why they work when cutting carbs alone fails, and exactly how to start using them. Some of these will surprise you. One of them is probably in your kitchen right now, and you've been throwing away the most powerful part. And at the end, I'm going to tell you what happened to Raymond. Before the 10 foods, you need to understand one thing, because without this, the list is just a list. With it, everything makes sense. High blood sugar almost never starts with the sugar itself. It starts with insulin. Insulin is the hormone your pancreas makes every time you eat. Its only job is to knock on the door of your cells and say, "Let the glucose in." Glucose gets out of your blood, into your cells, where it belongs. Blood sugar stays normal. But here's what happens after years of eating in a way that keeps insulin spiking constantly. Your cells stop answering the door. The insulin knocks. The cell doesn't respond. So your pancreas makes more insulin, knocks harder, and your blood sugar climbs anyway because the glucose has nowhere to go. We call that insulin resistance. And it's the root cause sitting underneath most cases of type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, and stubborn high fasting numbers. Now here's where most people go wrong. They think the solution is to just eat less sugar, cut the carbs, starve the problem out, and that helps temporarily. But it doesn't fix the receptor. The cell door is still broken. The moment you go back to normal eating, the numbers climb again. The 10 foods I'm about to show you do something different. Some slow the glucose down before it even becomes a problem. Some cool the inflammation that's been jamming the signal for years. And some just wake the receptor back up so your body can do what it was always supposed to do on its own. That's what reversing insulin resistance means, not managing it, reversing it at the cellular level. First food. And I need you to not scroll past this one because it sounds unfamiliar, because this is one of the most clinically underused blood sugar tools I know of, and it costs less than your morning coffee. Fenugreek seeds. Small, amber-colored, found in the spice aisle of almost any grocery store. Here's what happens inside your body when you use them. The seed is packed with a specific soluble fiber called galactomannan. The moment it hits water in your stomach, it swells into a thick gel. That gel physically slows how fast your stomach empties carbohydrates into your small intestine. Slower emptying means glucose trickles into your blood instead of flooding it. No flood, no panic spike, no emergency dump of insulin. On top of that, fenugreek contains an amino acid that actually helps your pancreas release insulin more efficiently and helps your muscle cells pull glucose out of the blood. A randomized controlled trial published in the Journal of Diabetes and Metabolic Disorders showed significant reductions in fasting blood sugar in patients who consumed fenugreek seeds daily over just 8 weeks. How to use it. Take 1 teaspoon of whole seeds. Soak them overnight in a glass of water. First thing in the morning before breakfast, drink the water and eat the softened seeds. If the slightly bitter taste is too much, grind them and stir half a teaspoon into yogurt. Start with a small amount. The fiber is strong and your gut needs a few days to adjust. Second food. And there's a very good chance you already have this in your kitchen, but the wrong kind. Most people reach for the cinnamon at the grocery store and grab cassia. It's the common one. The problem is, cassia contains a compound called coumarin that puts real stress on the liver when you take it daily in meaningful amounts. It's fine sprinkled on a dessert once in a while, but for daily blood sugar use, it's not what you want. What you want is Ceylon cinnamon, sometimes labeled true cinnamon. It's milder, it's safer for daily use, and this is the one that the research is actually on. What makes Ceylon cinnamon work is a group of compounds called polyphenols. These polyphenols behave almost like insulin themselves. They help your insulin receptors grip glucose more tightly, and they slow your stomach from emptying too fast after a carbohydrate meal. Research from the Human Nutrition Program at the USDA found that less than half a teaspoon per day meaningfully lowered fasting glucose in adults with type 2 diabetes. Quarter to half a teaspoon per day, stirred into your coffee, your oatmeal, a smoothie. The key is to pair it with a carbohydrate meal because that's exactly when you want your receptors gripping harder. One purchase, one habit. Don't skip this one because it's simple. Simple is often the most sustainable. Third, food. Pay close attention here because this is the most underused thing on this entire list. And the distinction I'm about to make is one most people never hear. Not broccoli. Broccoli sprouts. The tiny 3-day-old sprouts. The difference matters enormously. Broccoli sprouts contain somewhere between 50 and 100 times more of the active compound than a full head of mature broccoli. That compound is called sulforaphane. And sulforaphane does something none of the other foods on this list do quite as directly. It goes to your liver and quiets down what I call the overnight glucose factory. Here's something that confuses a lot of patients. You wake up in the morning, you haven't eaten anything since dinner, and your blood sugar is higher than when you went to sleep. How? Your liver did it. In a healthy body, the liver releases a small controlled amount of glucose overnight to keep you fueled while you sleep. But in insulin resistance, that release goes haywire. The liver keeps producing glucose it doesn't need to, and you wake up with a high fasting number that has nothing to do with what you ate. Sulforaphane targets that specific problem. A 2017 study from Lund University in Sweden gave concentrated sulforaphane to people with type 2 diabetes and brought their fasting blood sugar down measurably, with the strongest effect in the people whose fasting numbers were hardest to control. A small handful, about a quarter cup on a salad or sandwich most days. Do not cook them at high heat. That destroys the active compound. Eat them raw or barely wilted. Fourth is avocado. And I want to address something directly because I hear this from patients constantly. I avoid avocado. Too many calories. Too much fat. That fear is costing them. The fat in an avocado is monounsaturated fat, the same family as olive oil, and it is one of the most blood sugar-friendly things you can put on a plate, not because it directly lowers glucose, because of what it does to the meal around it. When you add half an avocado to a plate of rice or toast, you're not removing the carbohydrate. You're putting a brake on how fast it converts to blood sugar. The fat and fiber together slow the entire meal down. Glucose climbs gently instead of spiking, and over time, monounsaturated fat has been shown to actually improve insulin sensitivity. Your cells start answering that door a little faster. Half an avocado a day, on your eggs in the morning, mashed onto whole grain toast, added to a salad with a starch. Anywhere you have a carbohydrate, an avocado softens the impact. Fifth is chia seeds. These punch well above their size. If you've ever dropped chia in liquid and watched it turn into a pudding, you've already seen exactly how it works in your gut. Chia is one of the richest sources of soluble fiber available. When it hits the water in your stomach, it forms the same thick gel we talked about with fenugreek. That gel wraps around the carbohydrates in your meal and slows their absorption to a crawl. Steady release, no spike, no crash an hour later that sends you toward the cookie jar. Chia also carries plant-based omega-3 fat that helps reduce the chronic low-grade inflammation sitting underneath insulin resistance. Cool the inflammation, and the cells start listening to insulin again. 1 to 2 tablespoons a day. In yogurt, in water with lemon, blended into a smoothie. Give it 10 minutes to gel before you drink it. Sixth is fatty fish. And specifically, I mean salmon, mackerel, sardines, and herring. This one doesn't work by slowing your meal down. It works on the deeper problem, the reason your cells went deaf to insulin in the first place. Insulin resistance is driven in large part by chronic inflammation. When your body has been quietly inflamed for years, that inflammation physically interferes with the insulin signal at the surface of your cells. It's like static on the line. The signal comes in, but the cell can't hear it clearly. Salmon and mackerel are loaded with 2 omega-3 fats, EPA and DHA. These are among the most powerful natural anti-inflammatory compounds we know of. They reduce the inflammatory signals. The cell membrane gets healthier, and the insulin receptor starts functioning the way it was designed to. 2 servings a week, about the size of your palm each time. Wild salmon, mackerel, sardines, herring, all excellent. Canned mackerel and sardines are some of the cheapest, most effective foods on this entire list. Don't let the price fool you. Seventh is walnuts. Of all the nuts, this is the one I direct patients toward first for blood sugar specifically. Walnuts are rich in polyunsaturated fat and the same plant omega-3 found in chia. That fat improves the function of your endothelium, the thin lining inside your blood vessels, which is one of the first things high blood sugar damages. At the same time, the fat, fiber, and protein in walnuts blunt the blood sugar rise after a meal and have been shown to lower fasting insulin, which is the number that tells you how hard your pancreas is straining underneath your blood sugar reading. A small handful as a snack, about a quarter cup, 7 to 10 whole walnuts. Raw or dry roasted, not candied. Use them to replace a processed snack, not add on top of one. 1/8 whole eggs, yolk included. And I need to set something straight that a generation of bad dietary advice got completely wrong. For years, people were told the yolk was dangerous, that eggs raised cholesterol. That fear pushed millions of people toward breakfast cereals that were doing far more damage to their blood sugar than any egg ever could. A whole egg is almost pure protein and fat with virtually zero carbohydrate. On its own, it barely moves your blood sugar at all, but the real power is something called the second meal effect. When you start your day with eggs instead of cereal or toast, you don't just stabilize your blood sugar at breakfast. You walk into lunch with calmer numbers and a smaller spike. The protein and fat keep you full, so the mid-morning hunger that sends you towards something processed quietly disappears. In my practice, swapping a cereal breakfast for 2 or 3 eggs is one of the single fastest changes I see reflected in a morning glucose reading. 2 or 3 whole eggs in the morning, scrambled, boiled ahead for the week, folded with spinach. Put the avocado we talked about right on top. That is a near-perfect blood sugar breakfast. 9th, apple cider vinegar. This is the one with the fastest visible effect on a glucose meter of anything on this entire list. If you have a meter at home, you can watch this one work. The active ingredient is acetic acid. It does 2 things simultaneously. It slows your stomach from emptying, so carbohydrates arrive in your bloodstream gradually, and it helps your muscles pull glucose out of the blood and use it for fuel. Research led by Dr. Carol Johnston at Arizona State University found that 1 tablespoon of vinegar before a carbohydrate meal lowered the after-meal blood sugar spike by roughly 20% in people with insulin resistance. That's a measurable, meaningful effect from something that costs a few dollars. 1 tablespoon diluted in a full glass of water 10 to 15 minutes before a meal with carbohydrates. Always dilute it. Never drink it straight. The acid damages tooth enamel and the throat. And if you're already on blood sugar medication, talk to your doctor first. Vinegar combined with those medications can push your glucose down faster than expected. 10th food. And this one proves the entire point of this video. Lentils are a carbohydrate, and they will lower your blood sugar. Let that sink in for a second. Here's how it works. Lentils are built around something called resistant starch, wrapped in soluble fiber, and a significant amount of plant protein. That combination means the glucose inside a lentil is released into your bloodstream slowly and steadily over hours. Not all at once, not in a spike, in a long, controlled, gradual release that your body can actually manage. They also carry the second meal effect we talked about with eggs. A bowl of lentil soup at lunch gives you steadier numbers well into the evening. Clinically swapping white rice or white potato for lentils a few times a week is one of the most reliable interventions I know for bringing down A1C. That's your 3-month average blood sugar, the number that tells you what's actually happening over time. Half a cup to a cup of cooked lentils a few times a week. In a soup, a stew, a cold salad with olive oil, and a splash of the apple cider vinegar we just covered. Filling, inexpensive, and they stretch a meal further than almost anything else on this list. Let me tie all 10 of these together, because this is the reason they work when cutting carbs alone fails. Every single one of these foods is handing your insulin its job back without starving you, without eliminating entire food groups, without making eating feel like punishment. Stack them together and something interesting happens. The glucose stops flooding in, the inflammation starts cooling down, and the cells slowly start answering the door again. That's the whole game, not restriction. Addition, giving your body the inputs it needs to fix itself. Now, before I give you the plan, I have to stop here for a second. If you are currently on insulin or a sulfonylurea, one of the older blood sugar medications, these foods can lower your numbers fast enough that your current medication dose may suddenly be too high, and that can drop you into a dangerous low. So if you're on those medications, do not start adding all of these at once without your doctor knowing. Bring this list to your next appointment. Tell them what you're adding. Let them watch your numbers and adjust your medication downward as your body improves. You should not stop any prescription on your own, but you absolutely should be having this conversation with your doctor because these foods work and your medication needs may change. Here's what to do. Not next week. Starting tonight. Tonight, soak 1 teaspoon of fenugreek seeds in a glass of water before you go to sleep. Tomorrow morning, drink that water, eat the seeds. Then make 2 or 3 whole eggs for breakfast. Add half an avocado on top. That single swap changes your blood sugar for the entire day. This week, find Ceylon Cinnamon, not cassia. Start a quarter teaspoon in your coffee or oatmeal every morning. And before your biggest carbohydrate meal, take 1 tablespoon of apple cider vinegar, diluted in a full glass of water, 15 minutes before you eat. This week, also swap white rice or white potato for lentils at least twice. Put fatty fish on the menu 2 nights. Over the next 2 weeks, add chia seeds, broccoli sprouts, walnuts. Stack them in gradually. You're not removing the foods you love. You're building a layer of protection around them. Start with 2 or 3. Watch what happens. Then add more. Raymond came back 8 weeks later, fasting blood sugar down from 192 to 131. A1C had dropped. His doctor, not me, his own primary care physician, reduced his existing medication dose. He did not need the second prescription. He hadn't starved himself. He hadn't cut out carbs. He'd added things. Every morning, eggs and avocado instead of cereal. Fenugreek water before breakfast. Ceylon cinnamon in his coffee. Lentils twice a week instead of white rice. Apple cider vinegar before his biggest meal. Fatty fish on Tuesdays and Fridays. Walnuts in the afternoon instead of crackers. He called me a few months after that second appointment. Said something I think about often. He said, "I feel like my body started working with me again instead of against me. That's it."